I have a question which many people who are watching this will probably want me to ask, and that is that when you talk about the four worlds that were mentioned both by your extraterrestrial contacts and are present in the Hopi legend in the same form, can you match that against the traditional scientific thinking in terms of the fossil record, the evolution of man? Can you put any kind of a date on this? What does this actually mean to a paleontologist or an anthropologist? Are you able to answer that question, or is it just not known?
That is an interesting question to me, because the way that I can explain this is that when I was on board the craft, I was given knowledge. It was like saying that I had an education in many areas, okay? One of the areas was on the evolution of man and where we came from, where we're going. So in this, it was as though I went to, let's say, grade 3 or grade 4. So I have only a little bit of knowledge about these different worlds. I am not the expert, but I know that there's others like myself out there who would have far greater in-depth knowledge concerning this question. What became very clear to me in the visions that I was shown on this screen was that, for example, in the beginning, they said that it was like they threw the seeds of life across the land and waited for life to form, and nothing happened. So we were just, you know, like worms in mud. This is the image that came into my mind.
So that's billions of years ago.
Yes, yes. In the second world, I was shown in the second world that this very grotesque life form was produced, and that they waited for it to evolve to see if it would be the right host for this spark of life. In whatever you would like to call it, I call it the spark of life, for this to be able to facilitate a spiritual life and a greater understanding of the universe. But this, in the second world, the life that was formed was very, very simple, is the word that came to me. It was very simple and basic and just really did not evolve. So for myself, when I look at that, of course, when I came back from this experience, and it took me a while to even be able to put all of this, associate it to the world, I clearly was able to see that this was the dinosaur age. Then in the third world, I was shown from above the earth, and then again into this room where these people were that were taken from the third world and brought into this world. And when I was shown from above, what I saw was this city that was very, very much filled with light. So there were cities, but they weren't all over the earth. They were just sort of in pockets here and there. And so when I myself, as Miriam, look back through history at this, I see it as being some of these lost worlds that have been looked for, and some of them, part of them, found over the course of our lifetimes or over the last 100 years. So these three worlds that were talked about prior to this one, it makes very clear sense to me in my limited knowledge of anthropology and paleontology and all of the rest of it. It just looks clear to me that these were the different worlds.
Okay. My next question then that comes from that is that it sounds from what you're saying as if you're talking time scale of the responsibility of the caretakers. I think you call them that word. Other contactees, of course, have called them different terms. Some people call them the watchers. Jim Sparks called them the keepers. These are all approximations, presumably kind of transposed into our language, for some kind of a guardian race. Maybe that's another term that we could use. But the time scale we're talking about seems to be huge. We're talking about certainly hundreds of millions of years and possibly billions. How advanced are these people? Where are they from? Who are they? Or are they extraterrestrials? Are they time travelers? Are they us in some way, as some people, in my view, compellingly claim? Do you know what the score is here? And what's the relationship between them and the other extraterrestrial races that you must have heard about?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to address the different names, the keepers, the watchers, the caretakers. I call them all of these things myself. And the reason that I do is in part because they are all of these things. They do watch over us. They do take care of us. They are our caretakers, and they keep the knowledge. In my book, I write, they are the keepers of the knowledge that the indigenous people are. They too are the keepers of the knowledge, and so forth. So all of these terms, these different terms that we use to describe them are correct, in my view. The other question was, you know, what kind of a scale are we looking at as far as time is concerned? Now, it is my understanding, again, from what they've shared with me on board that craft, that they have been here since the beginning of the Earth, and that they had a hand in creating humanity. That they too, as it was described to me by them, that they too seek to know God, meaning the creator of all that is, all that was, and all that will be. The creator of everything, the very beginning, the source of all things. So they were given a task. It's like saying, you know, whatever your job is, when you get up in the morning and you go to work, that's what your job is. That's what you know that you do. Well, when we are here on Earth, it is no different than for them than to say that this is what they do. They are the caretakers of the Earth, and this is what they've always done. As far as what timeline they're from, it was also described to me that some of them are from our past, our present, and our future. Because the way that time was described to me, they did have the ability to go back and forth and in the present. They did have that ability. How? You'd have to ask them that, because I have no idea. But they also said that some of them were physical, that they were no different than you or I, that they lived on the earth, that they did live under the earth, inside the earth, that there were others that were interdimensional beings, and there were others on different planets, that all of them were created for the same task in these different areas, and they all had the ability to communicate with one another, and it was like saying that they were cousins. So it's a very complicated question to answer because it is so complicated to explain. It's almost beyond my words to be able to clarify it.
Contact Henry Deacon, who has encountered these situations from a completely different standpoint, working under contract for the American military and American intelligence services, has said that it would take a book of at least 1,000 pages, and he just did not have the energy to write that. Or maybe he said 10,000. Maybe he's not counting. And the impression I got is that this whole backstory is so complex, so deep, so convoluted, almost beyond human understanding, such a backdrop of complexity, that it's like, who are we to try and figure this out? We've actually got our own problems. Anything else is just intellectual curiosity, but the fact is that they're there. At least some of them are caring about us, it would seem. The question I do have, though, linked with what I was just mentioning about the American military and American intelligence services, do you know anything about the possible relationships of this group with with the military, or is it a different group of aliens that they have been working with? Do you know anything about that, or is it a question you're unable to answer?
The question is, will I answer? I have not been told anything directly by these beings as to any relationship that was formed with any government or any group on the earth. So let me make that clear. I have not been given any direct information regarding that. They haven't said, yes, we work with these people, we're working over here with that person. However, I have been shown and told certain things that were of a darker side, and warned of certain things. For example, at one point I was shown something it's difficult for me to talk about. I was shown an image of being in an underground base, that what took place there was so dark and ugly and horrifying to me that it was difficult for me to deal with. I don't know how to say this nicely, but it was I saw images of beings and of creatures that were just beyond the human comprehension of being able to see in real life. Now, what happened in this time that I was shown this, I was in the astral, and the being, the tall blonde that I was with, said, you must be very quiet, because if you're not, they will know that we are here. And don't ever come to this particular area. It is very dangerous for you. And I said, okie doke, I'm not going anywhere near there. And so do these tall blondes have associations with certain groups on the planet? No, not that I'm aware of. You asked me about these other beings that so many people are familiar with, which one of the biggest ones is the Greys. I do not have any direct information, but here's what I was told by the tall blondes, that they are here as the caretakers of the earth, and that they would help protect us from ourselves or other things or that we may not be aware of. So does that mean other beings? Absolutely. Does it mean that there's a presence of other beings on the planet? Absolutely. Am I here to talk about those beings with you? No, because I want the message of the tall blondes to be really clear with people that they are here in peace and that they do not mean us any harm. They will not come here and take over the earth. That is not their purpose. If it was their purpose, they would have done it long, long ago. And they do not have a dark agenda in this genetic program that they have going. And I want to talk about that because it's something that's very important to the people of Earth. In the third world, these individuals that were created for the purpose of spiritual development. And when the spiritual development was taking place, all of this knowledge about spirit and life was a part of who we are, where we're from, and where we're going. But again, to reiterate what I've already said, it was like giving children matches. They just didn't deal with it very well. So what has happened since the beginning of our existence as humanity is that different families all over the earth have been given this certain genetic information in our genome, right? And along the way, certain families are, quote, monitored by these caretakers, not to do anything dark, but to help so that very slowly these vessels that we are living in, that we are a part of, have the ability to withstand this greater information and knowledge. Because of course our brain is nothing more than a computer that is based on an electrical charge within the body.